So, please don't mind me. This is a completely unedited um, discussion of me hating Inuyasha. And I'm watching an Inuyasha episode right now. I put it on muted because I kind of want to discuss it while having the imagery in front of me right now. But this used to be one of my favorite shows of all time. And by the way, if the recording scene is off, I am recording this on my phone. Deal with it. That's just how it's gonna be. But the fact of the matter is, I used to be obsessed with this show. I discovered this show when I was 14 years old, maybe younger, because I happened to be in a Borders back before like there was Borders around, and I was looking through the manga section, and the cover of Inuyasha, the first manga, caught my eye. So I read it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But the one thing that kept me coming back for more and more was the character Shishomaru and his development from being this aloof character who was traumatized from a very young age to the point that it has created this hatred that he had for his younger brother, who has done nothing who has done nothing wrong but to be born. um and then you have like him to evolve into this caretaker character, into this person that he is still aloof into his own thoughts and such, but he has also grown to care. He has also grown to understand his brother a little bit more. So he has grown to let go of some of that hatred, despite the fact that like he's still also affected by it in a lot of ways, you know. And I found his character extremely interesting, especially the entourage he carried around with him. You have like Jockin, who was like a fanboy of his. You have Rin, who I always thought was like a kind of like, uh, Rin is always like kind of a sad. This is the reason why I'm making this video in the first place. Rin, to me, as someone that's now what 37 years old at this point when I'm recording this, she is like an adopted daughter. There is no ifs, ands, and buts about it. During the series and reading the manga, she's either treated as if she's an adopted daughter or adopted little sister, you know, something around that category of familiarity. And same when like Kohaku eventually joined the group, um, and then they had this little entourage of children and little wee demons to protect. Basically, he was their caretaker until the end of the series. And even afterwards, he made sure that Rin had a proper home. He also had, you know, Kohaku went off and just learned how to become more of a proper demon slayer. You know, Jockin got to live his dream life and just live with Shishomaru. You know what I mean? But you know, but what really, really cheeses me off was, and what has caused this hatred to this day I have of this show, that unfortunately I have a lot of unfortunate fond memories of, along with like favorite characters besides Shishomaru, like Kikyo, Kagome, and Yasha himself, you know. Um, I enjoy a lot of characters. There's also a lot of characters I despise, which is Moroku and Naruto. And I could go into details about those two later, but I'm just gonna save those for last for another time, probably. But I'm gonna focus more of this video on Shishomaru and what caused my hatred for Inuyasha. Um, so this is a very heavy topic we're gonna talk about right now. This is what I'm going to talk about is my own experience. Um, I'm not gonna go in crazy details because obviously I don't want to give too much information. But unfortunately, I was, you know, Inuyasha, when I was little, when I was 14, unfortunately I was groomed by it. And what I mean by that wasn't because just the reading material, because that is a whole nother thing we could talk about later. But let's discuss how I got indoctrinated into being groomed, basically. So this is really not an easy topic for me to talk out loud. It really isn't. So I apologize of the unfiltered factor of this video, but you know, it is what it is. When I was 14 or like 13 years old, I was looking up like stuff online based on the Inuyasha like anime series and the manga and so forth, because I wanted to know more information of this series that I happened to have read in the bookstore. And to my discovery, there was like a couple, like there was a bunch of, like, obviously you have a lot of ships back then, like the old school ships like Inuyasha and Kagome, Inuyasha and Kikyo, Sango and Moroku, so forth and so forth. Those are the canonical, whatever you want to call it. But the one that caught my eye as a kid was Shishomaru and Rin. And not when Rin is a child, mind you. It was, in my head, was, oh, when she's older, she could go out with Shishomaru. And obviously that is wrong for many reasons as today. But as a 14-year-old who also grew up in an environment that unfortunately um, did not really protect me as much as I would like to be protected. Not because of my family lack of care, but rather just the circumstances that has surrounded me and so forth. And again, I won't go into detail about that, but yes. But anyways, when I was 14 years old, I saw like music videos, fan art, and so forth of Shishomaru and older Rin. And when I say older Rin, we're talking about her being pretty much the same age as like Shishomaru, basically. Shishomaru was like a 19-year-old base, like, even though he's obviously like 500, whatever, like, what I mean? Like, he's mentally 19 years old in the series, right? So, I'm like thinking, oh, if Rin happened to be 18 or 19 years old, it'll be okay. And obviously it's not, because there's a power dynamic, there is a familiar dynamic, there's, the fact that Rin is literally a child when she first met Shishomaru, so she doesn't know any better. And, yeah. So, anyways, as I was, unfortunately, when I was growing up, I saw this as a quote unquote popular ship, along with Shishomaru and Kagura, there was supposedly flame wars between the two, aka they just have beef with each other. Like, oh, Shishomaru belongs to Kagura. Oh no, he belongs to older Rin, which is really a gross sentence all of itself. But um, but basically, what it was is that, like, you have a lot of these posters online and kind of normalizing it, and who are clearly older than me in many ways. And for a while that really affected me. I obviously do not support it anymore. It's disgusting, and I don't care if you do support it. You really reevaluate yourself. You know, I'm not gonna make an argument about it. I'm really not. I'm just gonna be straight up honest. It is disgusting, because again, whether you think like, oh well, what if she's older? What if, like, oh, he's a demon, or whatever excuse you may have, you have a dynamic where you had a child being raised by an older caretaker and eventually being groomed by said caretaker to be their spouse. That is just no. And you can say, like, oh, well, you didn't do anything, you just fed her and just fed. It's still wrong. If you think, this is why, like, a lot of people don't trust older men and so forth, because this is a stigma that has happened due to realities that unfortunately is affected by it. But anyways, and you could also say, well, it's fiction. Well, sometimes fiction could also it could also be reflected to the reality of the situation. So, but for a while, like, it was never, the series never actually confirmed an actual canonical partner for Shishomaru. He just never had a partner. That was simple as that. And when I got older, I always, I thought, like, maybe he's ace, or maybe he just doesn't care, or we don't know. But the fact of the matter is, there was no canonical partner for him at the end of the series, which is absolutely okay with me, because honestly, I really did not see a canonical partner for him in the long run of things. If you do, like, for some reason, like, ship like Kikyo and Shishomaru, or Kagome and Shishomaru, or whatever, like that, whatever. I'm not gonna really, like, be an asshole about it. But I'm just gonna be, but, um, as I was saying before, I just couldn't get with it, and I just couldn't I couldn't get with it anymore, um, because of one thing that came out recently. Now, there was supposedly a sequel in the works for a while for Inuyasha, and eventually manifested into being the Yasha Hime show that we see today. Um, and as you could guess, it just completely, utterly destroyed my any hope I had for watching Inuyasha again as a series. Because when I watched that show, besides the obvious elephant in the room, let's just be real with ourselves. If even the obvious elephant for the room first, let's say for example, Shishomu married Selena Gomez, whatever. Let's just say that Selena Gomez was a demon that came that happened to be living in feudal Japan at the time, and she's the same age as Shishomu. Sure, why not? He like, let's say for example he married Selena Gomez. I don't know why, but he did. Let's just go with it. You know, the series will still be ass. Like, the writing is ass. The animation is ass. The character designs are ass. Like, there is like there is no real like motivation of the villain to be the catalyst for our protagonists. And the protagonists themselves, the backstory of them, besides their mother being Selena Gomez, is a messy scenario, you know? And it's just, okay, one was transported to the past, the other one is transported to the future. I mean, and then the other one forgot because of some, like, there was a lot of, it would have been nonsense regardless who was Shishoma's partner, you know? I think I would have just pretended it never existed and still continued the original series if that was the case. You know, I wouldn't really care as much. But unfortunately, Selena Gomez isn't Shishoma's wife in the series. And unfortunately, they had made it canonical that Rin is his official partner. Ever since then, I completely gave up any love I pretty much had for Inuyasha. It's very difficult to for even for me to rewatch this episode I'm watching right now, which is basically Shoro being being kicked by being being kicked in the ass by Inuyasha right now with Tensaiga. This is the first match, which is basically when the group was just simply Inuyasha and Kagomedi. Not even not even Shippo was here, but I digress. Um, but anyways, when the sequel came out and it was confirmed that Rin was indeed Shishoma's wife, I I was completely disgusted by it because I could have gave him the benefit of the doubt of like, okay, there was no canonical character partner for him at the end of the series. That's fine, and you know if they made it like, I don't really care if Inuyasha made a shitty sequel afterwards. They made three shitty movies. Who gives a shit if they made it like a like a shitty sequel? You know what I mean? But I just don't think this is like. But this is beyond just a shitty sequel. I would have just ignored it and just moved on with my life if it was a shitty sequel. And I would have just, like, maybe I would have rewatched the series again, you know, and in my own little way. Or if I wanted to have my laugh, would just put on one of those crappy ass movies or whatever. But I can't laugh at this. I can't pretend this is okay. Or I can't pretend that I don't happen to know this as a fact now. Because now the whole series is completely tainted by this. That despite the character development of Shishomaru, of him growing to be like from the grin, just grow his heart like 3 more inches or whatever. It didn't matter because he's a predator. You know what I mean? It didn't matter how much he cared for those kids. It didn't matter how his emotional growth became over time, especially with Inuyasha. It didn't matter that he pretty much was the one that killed Naruto, which is crazy, which is, but it didn't matter because he's a predator. And there's a lot of things in this series that I'm not okay with. Like I said before, I'm just not cool with Moroku as a character in many ways for his obvious harassment, um, just being an overall creep. And yeah, we could go to detail about the nuances of Moroku and stuff like that, but I'm not here for the nuances of Moroku. I'm just gonna be straight up honest about how I feel about him, which is I find him disgusting. Like I asked, and how the manga didn't do this. They were, but for some reason the anime made Koga of like a freaking pedophile. Like he pretty much had this engagement to this literal child, and then eventually she grew up just to have this crush on him, and then to marry him. You know what I mean? In the series, which is so freaking weird in so many freaking ways. But I just I couldn't do it. I like in the manga luckily, Coco was saved from that and did not have like a canonical spouse or whatever like that. Thank God. But for some reason, there was always red flags flying around, and we could also go into detail of how they treated the the private scenes of certain characters and how wrong it was for to see every detail, if you know what I mean. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. So like, and I won't go into further about that, but there was always kind of red flags. But as a 14-year-old at the time, I just didn't think much of it. I was just thinking, okay, maybe this is just normal because it happened to be a series meant for older teens, and and I happen to be 14, so maybe this is something I had to get used to. And obviously now as a 37-year-old, no, you don't, you should not get used to this. You should not be okay with this. This is disgusting. And it saddens me because Inuyasha was a really huge part of my life in a lot of ways. It introduced me to a lot of a lot of friends that I happen to know. It has inspired me to have written different characters and stories and D&D campaigns and so forth and so forth. It hasn't it like has some of my favorite characters of all time. Like again, I love Kikyo and I love Inuyasha and I love Kagome. I like those three as a characters. And I used to be able to say that confidently about Shishoru, but I can't even say that anymore because the series just literally destroyed him. They absolutely destroyed him. And I wish I could say for a fact that oh, things would be great and stuff like that, or I could just happen to ignore it, but I just simply can't. And I really don't have no other conclusion for this rant. This is literally just me venting unfiltered right now. I don't have a segue to the conclusion to this video, nor do I have anything profound to say other than I am disgusted by Inuyasha and I cannot be a fan of it anymore, which is disappointing to say because there is some merit to the series in a lot of ways. Like the animation is good, the characters the three characters I've mentioned before are great, um but there's also a lot of bad. Some of them are just silly bad. Like for example, there's a couple characters in the show we just happen don't need because they're just wasting time, like the purple baby or the freaking seven dudes. I really don't care about the band of seven. I just don't care, and I don't care about that stupid purple baby. I think those are complete time wasters, and if you remove them from the story, and which I have done it before, when I rewatched the series many years ago, I happened to skip over those arcs because they don't really change much of the story. Other than the fact that Inuyasha gets an upgraded sword, or Shishomaru learns something, or one of the characters get a development. You know what I mean? It's nothing significant. So, for me, I wish I could be into this series, but and I wish I could recommend it in some ways, but I simply can't because Shishomaru is a predator, and instead of being adverse against it, they promote it. They're literally making money out of it. They're literally getting money out of this by streaming services, by manga, by products like that are based on the fandom, selling that trash anime Yashahime and selling the trash manga based off of it. And it is very disappointing. It is very disappointing. And by the way, the music of the series, if I have not said it before, I love the music of the series. There's many times where I would just listen to the soundtrack of the series. But again, I can't. I wish I could recommend this show, but I can't. I simply can't. It's because Shishomaru is a predator. And this show unfortunately profits off of that and doesn't care about the consequences of those profits. Talk to you later. Bye.